Everybody, and welcome to another exciting phoenixNAP and Veeam backup and disaster recovery oriented webinar. My name is William Bell, and I'm joined by Jim Lowry, Senior Systems Engineer at Veeam. Welcome, Jim.
Glad to be here. Well, thank you.
So today we're going to talk about how you can leverage the technologies that you are either investigating or likely have if you're a Veeam customer to more effectively control your backups, right? Specifically in terms of everything but the primary backup, right? You're gonna have tons of different configurations on-prem that allow you to get that quick, fast restoration of your data in the event of an emergency, typically a smaller emergency. But today we're gonna talk about the cloud backup side in depth. So we're going to start with two poll questions. I'm going to launch the first poll. Where are you currently hosting all of your data availability infrastructure? Is it your Veeam backup server, all those things? Where is it sitting today? And I'm going to go ahead and launch that up. Give you some time to figure that out, and then we will shut it down in just a second here. I expect the majority of this answer to be on-prem or in some type of hybrid environment, but we'll see how that goes. Looks like that's the case. Perfect. All right, great. Thank you everyone for jumping on the poll. It helps us a lot. Helps me gear our conversation. I can tell you that, almost 100% of over 70% of the voting of the people on the call are either doing it on-prem or in a hybrid environment. I'm going to close that poll now. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to move into the meat here. So what part of your data availability management infrastructure is the biggest challenge? Like what keeps you up at night? What's really hard and is wasting a lot of resources? What does that look like for everybody? All right, okay. Pretty even split between cost control, lack of monitoring, and just the overhead. I mean, managing backups is time consuming. Everybody knows that, I think, but it's certainly something that, the easier you can make the entire workflow and the entire life cycle of your data availability management, the better it is for all of these things, right? In terms of cost control and the complexity and the overhead. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll down. And we'll get into the meat. So what is the state of the industry? What does this look like specifically around the cloud-oriented backups that people need and are using in their organization, right? So when we look at the primary backup infrastructure, it's certainly growing. I think people feel confident typically that they have that under control, that primary copy of their data. There's a lot of tools out there to make that easy. Veeam has spent, 13 years at this point in that space, trying to make it easy. But ultimately, what people are realizing is that it's just not enough for a company to say, and specifically leadership at an organization to say, yes, I'm confident that my data is protected, right? And so we're seeing, and Veeam specifically in his case is seeing an increase in an attempt to target offsite copies and disaster recovery, right? That's kind of top of mind, as well as security, right? So we're gonna talk a little bit about security, as well as security of their backup infrastructure and the introspection of that backup data to make sure that it is of high quality and is not going to corrupt their environment if they were to bring it back in. So, today 68% of organizations say they have some type of cloud services, part of their backup solution. It's a big fluffy number because anything, I guess, could kind of be considered cloud, right? That's writing a copy to an object storage bucket, right? Maybe that's as simple as what you need. Some people have taken, and I think in the Veeam ecosystem, are already consuming Cloud Connect backup services. and that has some advantages that I'll talk about a little bit. But I think that it's probably a fairly accurate number, and it will only increase from here. I think ultimately, though, what people see is that two things. I think the performance historically, although it is definitely better each iteration of Veeam, performance historically with just archive tier to Glacier or something like that to try to really rein in that spend isn't exactly performant enough. And then the moment that you try to do something different, like standard S3 or Azure Blob or something like that, you end up in a situation where the costs start to get a little bit out of control. And it's not typically just the data storage, although that can be a factor. A lot of times it ends up being egress fees, request fees, break fix, it's just not working all the time and working high quality of architecture. And that varies heavily as well, depending on what you're trying to do, the size of your environment. Smaller environments probably don't struggle with that as much. Larger environments, it can be a real challenge. And so when we look at what organizations are considering, I think that ultimately they're trying to figure out where the sweet spot is, right? Where is the cost under control, but the performance and the availability of that data is high quality. And so I think once you find a place to protect your data, whether that's an offsite disaster recovery copy, whether that's a archive offsite copy, and you start to kind of wrangle some of those components in, what we see is that people turn their eyes towards like that recovery side, right? Like, what does it mean to ensure that my data is available? And it adds a lot of complexity, right? And so security is a large topic. We've done some webinars in the past around data security and backup infrastructure, but ultimately some of these things on this list here are addressed by a competent data availability management solution or collection of solutions. Some of them aren't, right? Some of them are things that your security team is worrying about on a daily basis. And yeah, so I think that this is a big list. It's certainly an eye chart. Where I think that people are struggling the most, it's typically around making sure that their data, that the entire life cycle of their data availability management operations completes on schedule inside the cost parameters that the organization has laid forth to IT. And when something occurs, being able to address that quickly and competently. I think that is where people get into a bit of a struggle, right? Because what we see is organizations feel like, okay, I've got backups running, right? And so when something happens, I'm just going to restore from backup. And then they realize that their backup array has an issue, and then all of a sudden they're not doing the regularly scheduled backups, and they have no other alternative options, right? Or they run out of storage space, and they should be, archiving some of their backups, but instead they've decided to kind of keep them all on some type of primary storage device. We see ransomware targeting backup appliances and compromising not only production systems but backup systems as well, and people not having taken the steps to implement some of the capabilities that are available in most products, and certainly Veeam, right, to achieve immutable copies of your backups. So I think that here's what I would say: if there are points where you're struggling you significantly have issues or questions, there are a lot of people available to help, right? And I think that that's something that people don't take advantage of enough, right? You guys have you have Veeam account managers, they have systems engineers that are assigned to them. You have CSPs like phoenixNAP that have, at this point, 9.5 years of experience of operating some of the world's largest like archival, the cloud backup side of that equation. You can come to us, we can answer questions. I think that people tend to feel like, it's a requirement to buy something if you call someone. And I just don't think that that's a reality. I think people put those restrictions on themselves, but please don't hesitate, reach out, ask questions in this webinar. I'm happy to address them as best I can. So you want to make sure that you've got your primary backups, you're taking all the security, you're doing all the security things that you can do typically as an IT administrator or backup operator, to make sure you've got data protection, that all of your backups are operating on schedule, and that you're testing your backups, which people really don't do. And it bites everyone in the butt all the time. But testing those backups as much as possible. Then you can move into, okay, how do I make this process easier, faster, better? And that's through, I think, monitoring, was a big component of the poll that we did earlier, lack of monitoring, right? People having a view and visibility into the kind of KPIs of that workflow. Are my backups, being achieved regularly? Are they on schedule? How are my backups being tested? What does it look like when it's done? Is my data encrypted? Do the right people have access and the wrong people don't have access? What's my overall capacity management? When am I going to run out of backup storage space, right? Like all those things are big. And then as you get into things like cost allocation, in large organizations, that becomes a big deal, right? Managing each individual department's usage of and data retention and data storage needs. And I think that you get into you got to find ways to address each one of these independently to some extent. I think that the deduplication and compression side of cost optimization is nearing its completion, right? Like either you're using an array that's specifically designed to take backups and is deemed to be using, has deduplication on it, or you've got a technology like Veeam and, pretty much you're dummy if you're not turning on compression and deduplication. And then everyone's now looking at, okay, how do I tier my data in such a way that I know I can get my my highest value target backups back quickly? I've got my other data somewhere else, and then I'm taking all my copies and I'm putting them in a third copy in an offsite location and making that a possibility. So as you push towards, what does this do for your business, right? I think that protecting the business from the worst case scenario is probably the most important underserved component of being in charge of data availability, right? It is, having a clean copy of your data that is not infected with ransomware is by far and away the most important way to address any type of ransomware attack, right? No one wants to be MGM right now, 100%. So if you wanted a lesson in what that can look like, if you lose access to your data and have no way of just essentially starting over from scratch, even though that takes time, from a clean backup, then you're going to sit there spinning your wheels, looking for other different ways out. So proactive monitoring, understanding what's being created in your environment. Is it being backed up? We see that a lot. People operate and manage, private clouds. They create their backup jobs. They create all their stuff, and then that over time there's a slippage. There's essentially a collection of VMs that get created without any type of data protection policy applied. Something happens to a application or a set of files on those VMs or the whole VM itself, and then you're toast, right? And ultimately, this leads to revenue protection, enhanced productivity for the organization, making sure that the business is available, and yeah, ultimately that business continuity for the entire organization is the goal that we're all striving to achieve. So here, I'm going to introduce Jim Lowry. He's going to come in, he's going to talk about how Veeam views the things that I've talked about directly. And then he's going to show you a demo of the new service provider console that shows you how easy it can be to kind of centrally manage a lot of this on-prem and cloud copy of your data using the Veeam technologies that you likely already have. And then I'll wrap things up from there. Let's take it away, Jim.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Will. I appreciate it. And thanks for, again, the opportunity to be here. Let's go ahead and jump onto the next slide here. So to what Will's point here, my goal here is to show you two ways that are very broad spectrums, both backup as a service and DR as a service, that Veeam and phoenixNAP have had the opportunity to run together, as Will mentioned, nearly 10 years. They were one of the original pioneers of our Cloud Connect technology and are extremely proficient with everything that we can do. And the demo, as Will mentioned, we'll go a few minutes over different simple tasks you can do within the console. They're going to really help out. Yeah, go ahead and build that out. Will, there should be 3 bullets there. Thank you. So as a general rule, with offsite backup as a service, you want to follow the 3-2-1 rule. Well, what's the 3-2-1 rule? From Veeam perspective, when we coined this 3-2-1 rule, we want to have at least 3 copies of your data. You want to have that data sitting on 2 different media types, and you want to make sure one of those copies is offsite. And then since then, we've added a couple other things too, like another 1 and a 0, to show that one of those copies should be immutable, and the 0 would be that there's no errors and that there's no problems when you're trying to do a restore. Everything we do as a company is focused on how do I make sure that when a restore operation is required to happen, that it is as fast as humanly possible or as software as possible, and to make sure that it is always resilient and always there, ready to go. And that's something that pnap and Veeam have been able to dial in extremely well with their cloud service offerings to really maximize your investment with not only hosting whatever part of that workload you're hosting in pnap or targeting for storage, but also the backup investment with our software. You want to make sure that all of your pieces work and that you can test and automate that. So the 2 primary ways with backup as a service that we can do that would be using either Veeam Backup and Replication Server, or you could go to a hosted Cloud Connect environment inside of pnap and target that as well. That will allow you to have different repositories. One's local on-prem potentially with using with VBR or using with Cloud Connect. You can target your local disks, so you're on spinning media. Thank you, Will. But then I can also target stuff off-site using Cloud Connect as a target. And then that would allow you to have all of the different media that you need. So pnap has great tiering mechanisms built into place that Will was talking about earlier around your primary landing pad inside of a Cloud Connect environment could be, on whatever SAN environment that you need, depending on your workload. It could be really high-end, SSD flash, so that you could fail over and run inside that environment on that if you needed to, like for a database, all the way down to SATA drives, or kind of so you don't need that real high platinum retention, but you can have spinning media there. Also going to object storage, having a couple of different flavors that we'll mention. So one of those could be just a standard S3 or blob compatible object storage for your kind of medium-term retention. And then you could tier that off into either Amazon Glacier or Azure Deep Archive and use that very cost effective to store things, but it can be very expensive to pull things out, right? So you want to make sure that you've got that infrastructure tuned and set up and designed in such a way that as stuff tiers, you're maximizing the cost around how often and what's the probability that I need to pull that data back out, right? So if you've got HIPAA regulations or SEC regulations, then you're going to Cloud Connect. You don't necessarily want to think you're going to have to pull any of that 7-year retention data that you would need for the HIPAA or SEC requirements. So maybe by the time you get to 1-year retention, 99.99% of your restores are always within that not 1 year or less window. Then maybe that years 2 through 7 makes sense to go put that into an archive solution, because the odds of having to pull that data back out are so low that it's advantageous over time to have the cheaper storage there, right? And that's something through Cloud Connect Backup that VNAP has designed and works very, very fluidly. And it can be tuned at any time. If you need to adjust those settings, it's very easy to do on the fly to meet whatever those particular job requirements are. So let's go to the next slide. So we'll cut a little bit about backup as a service, but DR as a service is also, go ahead and build this out for me. Well, thank you. I think there's 3 bullets on each. Yeah. So DR as a service is also something that they've got very dialed in for using us. A lot of the time when people are thinking DR as a service, they're thinking that maybe of backup jobs and instant VM recovery, right? And that's always going to be available, part of the backup as a service offering. And then some, depending on your point of view, DR as a service will do that as well. But it can be so much more than that. DR is a very broad spectrum. And what we've been able to do and leverage at PNAP using both Veeam backup and replication, Cloud Connect replication, and is automate everything from what we call CDP, or continuous data protection operations, where your RTO, RPO times need to be within the seconds, right? How do I make sure that I have my crown jewel applications are sitting in standby mode, ready to operate, like you would using vCloud Director or VMware's Cloud Director platform? How do I integrate with that to make sure that I have the right boot order, the right machines, everything's ready to go? And how can I automate and test to validate that my failover plan will actually work? Well, what's great with what we've been able to do with phoenixNAP is they have the ability to do that entire spectrum. Anything with CDP that you would need for a 5-minute or less RTO, RPO, get down to about 2 seconds if you really need it. But maybe you don't need to have that type. Maybe you need more DR replication jobs where, maybe every hour, and then rolling transaction logs is sufficient. Well, we can cover that too using our solution integration with DR as a service at PNAP. So it creates a very, very broad and powerful solution that we can tune to your needs as an individual company and consumer. And it's something that is very experienced and dialed in. Yeah, thank you, Will. So this is a really good map as an example of something that we have built within the phoenixNAP environment, hosting with Cloud Connect, where I can have different customers or different tenants in their case that need different workload requirements, but I can accommodate every single one of them using secure technology that's very mature, it's been around for a very long time, and can target offsite locations in a very secure and controlled data center environment managed by the experts who know how to do all of this stuff. So, and then built on top of this, going through this platform that you see in the diagram, going through cloud gateways, so you have secure, authenticated users who only are allowed explicitly to get into the Cloud Connect environment. And now I've got a bridged system that's going to be tied over an SSL connection that is unique to each workload and to each tenant. So it's multi-tenant by design. The platform will run, and it supports all of the current security requirements that you want. Immutability at any level of storage, secure access with a role-based access control, controlling workflow and data flow, asset management within the cloud environment. So this is extremely powerful tool to really help you with everything you need to do. So
You
with
know what?
that,
I like it. I
yeah,
like
go ahead,
about
Will.
this is, how simple. So one of the things that we run into with other products is the networking becomes very complex, right?
Hmm.
Trying to get the networking together to handle the replication streams. What does it look like in
Right,
partial failovers? This is where we
right,
see all kinds of things cause issues with other replication technologies. One of the things I love about Veeam is that all of it's built into the platform, right? It's just a single outbound connection that's handling all of the encapsulation for hybrid routing and partial failover events and all
absolutely,
kinds of things. It's really cool stuff.
absolutely. It is, and it's one of those things where it can be very complex to set all that stuff up in the background. And that's one where our tool set, in combination with something like VMware Cloud Director and the skill set of the engineers at pnap, who are extremely talented, um, you can automate this entire thing. So you can literally have your entire data center blow up and automatically fail over and run inside of the pnap environment without skipping a beat. And you can test all of that ahead of time without impacting production by
Yep.
doing a failover test inside of a closed bubble on the backup or replica resources. So it's not even doing it off of production resources, but it's using the restore points that are available to it at the DR site. And so all that complexity to set that networking up is taken out of your hands. You don't have to worry about it. So
Right.
yeah, it's one of the coolest stories we have, that we can do all of this very securely, very easily, and to be as complex an environment as you need it to be. So that's a great point, Will. Thank you.
So I think we're going to
So
jump into that demo, right, Jim? So I'm going to hand you the
yes,
ball
sir.
here.
Yeah, let's go ahead
Um,
and pass that over to me. I'll share my
I'll let
screen.
you do that.
Let's show my screen and make sure I'm showing the clean version. All right, cool. So you guys have the view here real quick to show you what's called the Veeam Service Provider Console. This tool, I'm logged in right now as I would be as a pnap administrator, so for the entire portal. But there's absolutely access for you to run into and have credentials to log in and see your environment in context with this, and only your environment. And that's something that pnap does all the time with their partners or with their customers, that you can come in and see this through your view as well around your assets. So just as a heads up, this is a lab environment, so ignore the errors and warnings. This is stuff that we're toying with all the time here internally at Veeam. But I'll show you a couple of really cool tricks that are new to Veeam with the V7 launch a few months ago. So this tool is designed to give us a holistic view of the entire infrastructure running backups. So that could be hypervisors, hosts, networking things. It's going to give you a 30,000-foot view to see what's going on. In tandem with something like Veeam-1, which is going to be your really nitty-gritty granular asset management, with this I can go see at a high level what's going on in my systems, what systems are having errors, and where do I need to go to address those errors, where in my environment. Are my backup jobs failing, all that kind of stuff. And you can customize notifications, email alerts, everything so you can get a really good bird's eye view of what's going on every day. So in here, one of the new features that we've got here is the ability to do end-to-end management and restore of Veeam agents, where the service provider console can manage Veeam backup agents, like Mac, for Linux and Windows. And I'll show you a little bit about what we can do here. So the way it works, it's all policy driven, where I can take a single policy that I would set up for an individual user or a machine type. Let's say, think of it like a template. Okay, and I can apply that same policy to different workloads or to different tenants who have the exact same retention requirements. Right. For example, maybe I only need to back up a file share server once a day at 12:30. All right, cool. Well, I can create a policy that I apply that to any of those platforms across the tenant environment of multiple tenants at pnap and apply that same policy. So in here, I'll show you something pretty cool where this is an agent that's managed by the Service Provider Console. And I want to either create a new job or edit that job. I want to kick it off and run. So if I want to create a job, this is where I can go in and say either a new one where I'll create my own new policy, or I can use a policy that's already created to create a new job. So if I use a policy that's already there, I can see here what are the two different policies currently available in Service Provider Console for us to use. I've got some with a predefined policy tab, and I've got this Windows workload or Windows Server Edition. Let's make this up so that I can apply different policies, because I can manage workstations with the same agent or servers with the same agent. It's just, but they have different values. Like, so a server, we're going to plug in with VSS to be able to back up those Windows servers, application consistent backups. Where if you're looking at a laptop, maybe you don't need that. So if I want to create a new job, I can create those policies and then define what's going on here with the backup mode, either server or workstation. So from there, I can go back in and fill out all the different pieces you need about what machine you're backing up, where you want this policy applied to, and then create the backup job so it starts to run. So one other is cool here, I can now come into the console itself and start doing some of those restores as well. Well, hey, I've got this backup here. I need to do a restore off a file, so let's pull it up. So I've launched the file level restore portal from the console, and now I can go in and find the different restore points. In a real world example, you'd have multiple restore points here, but in a lab, because of space constraints, we've got just the one. But I would be able to go back at any point in time in those restore points and then work from here. So I've been able to, I'm now mounting that restore point. So I'm using the backup infrastructure to do it, where I'm going to be able to pull up what's going on with that machine and start doing some restores. Actually, you know what? Here, it should be taking that long. Let's do it with this guy. There we go. Okay, this should work a little bit faster. Maybe he's trying to be tricky with me today. I'll select a restore point while this comes up, because I want to show you guys the browsing abilities. Okay, cool. So I've pulled up, I've mounted that restore point, and I'm looking at the system image now. So I can look at the C drive. If I go down and open up the users, I can say, hey, here's Jason Ackard, who is one of the managers here at Veeam that runs the lab environment. And all of a sudden, Jason has an issue and needs to restore a file. So ntuser.dat, he's got to restore that file. Well, maybe he's got to come back and do that one too. So I'll add those to the restore list. And now I can go look at the restore list and say, hey, I've got these 3 files here, but you know what, I really don't need, that was a fat finger. I really don't need those 2. So I'm going to remove them from the restore list. I'm going to say, okay, let's go back to the user data. Now I want to do a restore of this. Do I want to restore it? Do I want to keep the original file, or do I want to overwrite the original file? So I'm going to say I want to keep it, and I'm going to kick off a restore, and I get to choose where that's going, right? So you can see the operation is running here, down in the action window. And what I'm going to do is show you, because I ran this earlier today, because it takes about a minute or 2 just to show it, and I didn't want to have to wait for that to show up. I restored the file back to Jason Ackard. You can follow the same directory path of where I browsed to when I was doing the browse, right? C drive, users, Jason Ackard. And within that restore portal, you can still see, wrong one. In that restore portal, I can see here still that I'm going at Jason Ackard, and I'm using the ntuser.dat, but because I decided to keep it and not overwrite it, I put the dat file in the root system of his share. And now I've got that file that's ready to go without having overwritten the original. If I want to overwrite the original, that's just as simple as going back to the restore list. I guess I should add it back in. Back to the add to the restore list, going back to it, and instead of doing a restore keep, I could do a restore to overwrite that old file. So that's quick little demonstration of what I can do here with just the Windows agents, but I can do all of this with Veeam backup for 365, for Microsoft 365 workloads, Veeam backup for Azure, Veeam backup for Google and AWS. I can do all of these image restores or files within them. I have complete control of all of those applications straight through one single pane of glass that is also able to give you insight into your entire environment and do custom notification and alerting for you. So it's a very, very powerful tool. And pNAP has this deployed so that you guys have the ability to use it at your leisure and run with it and get the insight that you really need, that you guys mentioned in that first poll is having tools to view what's going on is a big deal. So Jason, I'm sorry, not Jason, that's the tenant here I was playing with. Will, I'll turn time back over to you.
Sounds good.
And stop showing my screen.
All right. So Jim, thanks so much for the demo. I think that's awesome for people to be able to see it. You know, I think rounding out what Jim showed, this applies to agents, it applies to Veeam backup servers and the VMs you back up. You get a chance to see all that visibility, both on-prem and your cloud-based copies. You can do single file restores, complete self-service, Office 365 integrations. You know, there's so much to do from a kind of a cloud SaaS-based portal around your Veeam environment. It's not going to replace everything. It's not replacing those really intense backup operations that you have on-prem and configurations in the Veeam backup server. But it is kind of like a global data center view of what that looks like. And as he said, we are offering that to our customers today. If you're using our backup services and offsite backup services, then you get access to that portal and all the things it can do. You know, one of the things that is important for a lot of people to understand is we've been doing these Veeam backup services for a long time, and it is a core pillar of our business. But we're focused exclusively on infrastructure, right? And the component that we play as part of the backup and disaster recovery ecosystem is that offsite infrastructure to be able to do all of these operations. And so we have a ton of different solutions across this giant portfolio of infrastructure options and across the globe. Today on the Veeam side, we offer this in Singapore, we offer this in Amsterdam, we offer this in Phoenix and in Ashburn. So you have US West, US East, EMEA, and Asia Pacific that's covered by our Veeam backup services. And yeah, so as we move into kind of like, what does this look like holistically for us around Veeam? We believe in it so much that even our enterprise VM hosting products, right, which is called Data Security Cloud, we leverage Veeam to back up all of that data. We replicate that data to different data centers, right? If you, like the stuff that we talked about is in blue, the Cloud Connect and disaster recovery stuff that Jim mentioned, but also the managed backup for Office 365, that's undergoing a major overhaul right now. Up until the latest version of Veeam Service Provider Console that Jim was showing, you had to use a Veeam Explorer. You could we could configure a backup job on our side for you, and it could pull all that data and we could store it. But you'd have to use a kind of a clunky Veeam Explorer just to look at your data from Office 365. Now we don't even have to do it for you. You can literally sign up, get a storage quota from us for Office 365, and essentially just configure your own backup jobs, configure your own retention, configure everything yourself, do all your own self-service restorations, and really be in the driver's seat. I think I'm most excited about that, I think, more than anything else, but that's now available. And so when we start to kind of wrap things up, tie a bow around it, Veeam and phoenixNAP together truly means enterprise grade data availability. It is giving you two highly focused, tenured organizations that have world-class products working together to complete a solution, right? We deliver all of these things as a subscription and OpEx payment. You can rely on us Gartner for 4 years in a row has phoenixNAP in their top 10 disaster recovery and offsite backup oriented providers in their guide to disaster recovery. We are going to give you really fast recovery because of what I think it was kind of mentioned. Jim talked about it, but I think it's worth repeating. This isn't just a dumb storage target. If you're sending us your offsite backups, we're running native Veeam infrastructure on the other end of those copy jobs. It's actually their actual proxies that can reach into our backup, into the storage environment, grab a specific file, and only send that specific file from that one VM back to your environment. Not the whole VM, not a collection of files so that you can get enough blocks to make up some file or have a high level of confidence that you can get the file. No, just the file, because we're doing it on the server side with server side processing, right? Giving you tons of geo redundancy. There's a ton of automation both on the Veeam side. We've done some cool things with Terraform and Ansible around that. And Veeam Service Provider Console is tying all that together in a central point of view, or a single pane of glass, so that you can manage that environment holistically. And for everybody on the call today, we're gonna give 30 days of free backup for up to 5 terabytes. So you can try this yourself. Legitimately, it takes about 10 minutes to configure, if that, right? We, especially this, the offsite backup, the Cloud Connect backup component, we've actually automated that as well. So when you talk to sales, they're gonna refer you over to a link, you sign up, everything's automated. You don't have to talk to anybody else. If you don't want to talk to sales, if you just go to our website and find the backup care area, you can get this promotion. And yeah, you can sign up instantly, try it out, see how it works, and then let us know if you want to keep it. So we're trying to make it as simple as we can for everybody from that perspective. All right, we're gonna do a couple of questions before we jump out of here. A few people asked about recordings. We're going to provide a recording of this to everybody that attended. Yeah, so I think that answers that question. Somebody asked, what are the biggest challenges you face to implement these solutions, and how do you overcome these challenges? I think that with anybody in any environment, scale tends to be the biggest challenge, right? So we've seen some really large environments, and I would say, just being honest, typically for enterprises, the network connectivity that they have to their data centers is insufficient for the size of their environments that they're trying to replicate or take copies offsite, right? That's probably the biggest challenge. We see a lot of challenges on-prem, right? I think, unfortunately, still somehow the dance of backup operations is still the biggest challenge, right? You know.
Yeah, I'd add to that, Will, and I wrote this in the script too for the Q&A, but automation as well can be very, very tricky.
Yeah.
You know, especially at scale, you know, and with your scale, I mean, you guys are multiple petabytes of data under management, right? I mean, so automating a lot of these tools can be very tricky if you don't have that skill set. And I don't. I am not an automation ninja, but thankfully I have some on my team, and there's some at phoenixNAP too that can help with that. And those skills are invaluable to really make sure that you can address a lot of the tools you need done in the business.
I think another thing I would bring up is, you know, a lot of times people believe that certain things are happening, right? The saddest thing, I guess, would be what we see a lot of is people that believe that having a backup is protecting them from ransomware, and then their backups get annihilated by ransomware because they're not using immutability. That's a huge one. That's a sad day for an organization. The other sad days for organization, we see people thinking that things are backed up that are not backed up, right? And
or
it's not
they've
because the
never tested
backup
them.
solution didn't back it up. It's because they're the administrator in charge of that, didn't realize that VM was not being protected, right? And there are tools for that, right? Veeam-1 does a really good job of right showing you what's not being protected,
Absolutely.
but people don't use them, and so that causes issues all over the place. So let's see what
The
else we
best
got.
way to address that, the best way to address that with automating and testing your backup and failover plans. And
yes.
the things like sure backup, sure replica, secure restore, those are very powerful functions that can all be scheduled to run in the background and produce output reports of, hey, this test failed and here's why. Here's the section you need to go fix in your failover plan and test again, right? So I mean, it's to Will's point, it's a matter of understanding the tools available and then taking the time to make sure that they're being used properly and often. And that's a huge miss a lot of people miss, is validating that the plans are in place, will work, and then proving it through testing it.
Yeah, the other question that we had was around, are there any on-prem requirements, license specific requirements that that you need to use Cloud Connect? What's the minimum kind of license needed to use Cloud Connect from Veeam perspective?
I'll take that. So that's a really good question. Our keys are universal. So one key that you would use for protecting Veeam backup to 365 workloads would be the same key that you would use to protect anything that's VM related or Vision agents. From a Cloud Connect perspective, as a end user who's using pNAP's services to target Cloud Connect, if you're using Veeam's rental license that they would give you, right? Then all that's included, and you don't need to worry about it.
I think if you bought
there's no features that wouldn't help. Yeah.
Right? Is it Foundation that includes Cloud Connect? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. If you've already purchased your own license keys and you're bringing those because they're still active and they're valid, Veeam absolutely supports that. You can absolutely go to Cloud Connect. That's not a problem. Just keep in mind that when you purchase your own socket keys or VUL keys that are still good, they do not include offsite targets to Cloud Connect. So there is a small surcharge of that, but it's not like a full points for however you're doing it. But that's something that pNAP would be able to work with you guys on through pricing when you're contracting with them into sales.
But I think if you have, I'm not up to speed on the brand new packaging, but I think if you have what used to be equivalent of Enterprise or Enterprise Plus, that does come with the necessary license to do that. So I think you're good there.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah.
And then let's see what else. Somebody asked about locations. We answered that. Yeah, I think that's all we got. Let's go ahead and launch the last poll question, then we'll announce the winners. Give me 1 second here. Last poll question. Gotta hit the button for the poll. And this is for our lovely marketing people. If you have any questions, I killed it. I can't relaunch it, can I? Oh, well, I'm sorry. If you do have questions, please reach out, contact us, and we will, that stinks. I can't really do that poll, but we'll go ahead and answer any question you have. Like I said, if you don't want to talk to anybody, you just want to try out the offsite backup stuff, you're more than capable of doing that. You can go to our website, you can sign up for that on there. I want to thank everyone for attending today. I hope you learned a lot. Jim, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come help us out.
My pleasure, sir.
Absolutely. And then be looking out for the next webinar. I know we're going to do something fantastic, probably around Office 365. So next time we'll have some more information about that for you. I hope everyone has a great day and be safe. Thank you.